Thank you for the opportunity to present, and thank you also to the medical nutrition industry for awarding this grant to my team. My name's Nicole Kiss, and I'm presenting our project, an intelligent online platform to predict adverse outcomes from cancer-related malnutrition using the GLIM criteria. Cancer-related malnutrition affects approximately 1 in 3 people with cancer, and this is regardless of the type of cancer or type of treatment. We know that cancer-related malnutrition is associated with severe adverse outcomes, and these include reduced survival, reduced treatment completion, higher healthcare costs, and poorer quality of life. This means it's crucial to be able to predict people with cancer who are at high risk of these adverse outcomes. The GLIM criteria have been proposed as the international consensus criteria for the diagnosis of malnutrition in clinical settings by multiple international nutrition societies. The GLIM criteria consist of 3 phenotypic criteria, including unintentional weight loss, low body mass index or reduced muscle mass, and 2 etiologic criteria, including reduced food intake or assimilation or inflammation. In order for a diagnosis of malnutrition to be made, at least 1 phenotypic and 1 etiologic criteria need to be met. The GLIM leadership have called for validation studies of the GLIM criteria across multiple different clinical populations in order to determine their ability to predict adverse outcomes. One of the areas that hasn't been well explored so far is whether there are specific combinations of the GLIM phenotypic and etiologic criteria that are more predictive of adverse outcomes than others. Understanding this, and if there are certain combinations that are higher risk, would enable clinicians to identify or better identify those patients who are at particularly high risk. Machine learning is being increasingly used in health research to produce models that predict both disease and adverse outcomes in order to support clinicians in their decision making. In our project, we will develop an online intelligent dashboard using decision trees to predict adverse outcomes from cancer-related malnutrition. The dashboard will utilise machine learning models to determine which phenotypic and etiologic GLIM combinations are most predictive of 30-day mortality and 30-day hospital readmission. And this will be using an existing cohort of almost 2,500 oncology patients. There are multiple different machine learning approaches that can be used in healthcare. Our project will use a supervised classification approach, where the 21 possible GLIM combinations will be input into a binary classification model to determine the GLIM combinations that are most important for predicting an adverse outcome. And as you can see in the example on the screen, this could be alive or deceased. To generate the machine learning models, data on the almost 2,500 participants will be randomly split into a testing set of 75%, or I should say, sorry, a training set of 75% or a testing set of 25%. The model training process will be repeated 200 times, and the average performance metrics of the models will be, and the importance of each GLIM combination in predicting adverse outcomes will be comprehensively studied. The most important performance metric for a machine learning model is accuracy, which represents the proportion of test samples that have been predicted correctly by the model and takes into account true positives, true negatives, false positives, and false negatives. The main goal of machine learning algorithms is achieving high accuracy. But what constitutes high accuracy varies depending on the purpose of the model and can be anywhere from 80% to 99.9%. The most important GLIM combinations are determined using decision trees, which are then used to determine the probability of an adverse outcome according to the present conditions. The decision tree branches are followed depending on the presence, yes, or absence, no, of the GLIM combination until a predicted probability of the outcome, for example, unplanned admission or no unplanned admission, is determined. Using the example on the screen, the diagnosis of malnutrition by unintentional weight loss and reduced food intake, which we have called GLIM1, has a high chance of unplanned admission within the next 30 days. The machine learning models and decision trees will inform the development of an intelligent online dashboard where clinicians will be able to enter clinical characteristics and the GLIM diagnosis of a patient to predict the probability of an adverse outcome. Clinicians will then be able to use the predicted probability of an adverse outcome to make clinical decisions about the intensity and urgency of commencing medical nutrition therapy for the patient. The dashboard will also be supported by educational resources to guide clinicians in its use. Our contribution to optimal nutrition care from this project will include multiple peer-reviewed publications of the findings, and this is in order to support clinician confidence in the science underpinning the dashboard. The dashboard will be freely available to health professionals internationally, enabling real-time assessment of risk for individual patients. We envisage the dashboard will be transferable to other settings with the potential to include clinical populations other than cancer over time, particularly as new data sets become available. We see this as an opportunity for collaboration and possibly the formation of a consortium where various data sets can be used and fed into the machine learning models and ultimately the dashboard to support decision making in not just cancer, but many different clinical populations. There's also the opportunity to influence national nutrition policy as multiple members of our team are involved in national nutrition and oncology societies. Our project team is a multidisciplinary team of academic and clinical dietitians and physiotherapists, machine learning engineers, and health service managers from Australia and the Netherlands. And you can see the names of our team members listed on the slide. I'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank MNI for the funding and also to Osborne for supporting our application. Thank you.